Ha! Look at you, Naya. Still trying to fit in? You'll never be one of us. Just a diversity hire. Go back to where you belong!
I won't dignify that with a response.
A dark highway, red and blue lights flashing in the rearview mirror. A decorated high-ranking Navy SEAL commander in full dress uniform pulls over and complies with a routine traffic stop. Minutes later, he is writhing on the cold asphalt, 50,000 volts coursing through his body, fired by an overzealous local cop. But what that small-town officer did not realize was that he had just declared war on the United States military. The chain of command was about to snap. Highway 17 was a desolate stretch of asphalt cutting through the damp, pine-heavy landscape of coastal Virginia. Behind the wheel of the charcoal gray SUV sat Commander Elias Voss, a man whose life was defined by discipline, precision, and an unshakable devotion to his country. Elias was tired, the kind of deep, marrow-soaking exhaustion that only came after consecutive days of high-level strategic briefings at the Naval Amphibious Base. He was still in his full-dress uniform, choker white, crisp, and immaculate, adorned with the Navy Cross, a silver star, and the golden trident that marked him as a member of the most elite special operations force on the planet. He was a black man in his late 30s, possessing the kind of quiet, imposing physicality that did not require him to raise his voice to command a room. He just wanted to go home, kiss his sleeping wife, and rest. Then the piercing glare of red and blue LED lights shattered the quiet darkness of his rearview mirror. Elias's pulse did not spike. His breathing did not change. Men who fast rope into hostile territories under the cover of night do not panic over traffic stops. He calmly activated his turn signal, smoothly guiding his SUV onto the wide gravel shoulder. He placed the vehicle in park, turned off the engine, switched on the interior dome light, and placed both of his large, steady hands squarely at the 10 and 2 positions on the steering wheel. Standard procedure. He had absolutely nothing to hide. Behind him, a local police cruiser idled aggressively close to his bumper. Inside were 2 officers from the county precinct. The driver, Officer Grant Holloway, was a man whose career was defined by a fragile ego and a history of civilian complaints that had been conveniently swept under the rug by a sympathetic union. Holloway had a chip on his shoulder the size of a cinder block. In the passenger seat was Officer Theo Mercer, a rookie barely out of the academy, still idealistic, still nervous. "Look at this guy," Holloway sneered, unbuckling his seatbelt. "Tinted windows out here this late, probably trafficking." "Tints look legal to me, Grant," Mercer offered, quickly checking the computer. "Plates are clean, registered to an Elias Voss, no warrants." "Yeah, well, he crossed the yellow line a mile back. Let's see what this is about," Holloway replied, drawing his heavy flashlight and stepping out into the humid night air. Holloway approached the SUV with an exaggerated swagger, his hand resting casually but purposefully on the butt of his service weapon. He unholstered his heavy metal flashlight and rapped it hard against Elias's driver's side window. A sharp, aggressive clack, clack, clack designed to startle. Elias did not flinch. He slowly pressed the button to roll down the window, revealing the stark contrast of the bright dome light against the pitch-black night. "Evening, officer," Elias said, his voice a deep, calm baritone. Holloway shone the high-beam flashlight directly into Elias's eyes, an old intimidation tactic. "License, registration, and proof of insurance. Now." Elias squinted slightly, turning his head just a fraction to avoid the blinding glare. "My wallet is in my back right pocket, officer. My registration is in the glove compartment. I am reaching for my wallet first." Holloway finally lowered the light, and for the first time he registered what the man was wearing. The pristine white uniform, the gleaming brass, the rows of colorful ribbons, and the golden trident. Holloway was not a military man, but he recognized authority, and more importantly, he recognized when someone outranked him in the social hierarchy. Instead of respect, however, a hot flash of irrational resentment washed over him. Here was a black man sitting in a luxury SUV, wearing a uniform that demanded a level of respect Holloway felt he himself was owed but never received. "You in the military?" Holloway asked, his tone dripping with a bizarre, unearned condescension. "Yes, officer, I am a commander in the United States Navy," Elias replied evenly, keeping his hands visible as he slowly reached behind him to extract his leather wallet. He handed his driver's license and military ID through the window. Holloway snatched the cards. He looked at the military ID, then back at Elias. Commander, huh? Where are you coming from? Commander, Naval Amphibious Base, I'm heading home. You swerved back there, Holloway lied effortlessly. Have you been drinking? I have not had a drop of alcohol, officer. I've been in command briefings all day. Step out of the vehicle, Holloway ordered, suddenly taking a step back and unlatching the thumb brake on his holster. Officer Mercer, who had just walked up to the passenger side of the vehicle, froze. He looked across the roof of the SUV at his partner. Step out for what? Mercer thought. There was zero probable cause, zero signs of intoxication, and zero threat. Elias's jaw tightened imperceptibly. He knew the law. He knew this was an unlawful order stemming from an ego trip, but he also knew the grim statistics of the world he lived in. A uniform and a rank were not magical shields against a bullet on a dark, lonely road. Officer, I am complying with your request, but I want to state for the record that I have done nothing to warrant this, Elias said, his voice remaining terrifyingly steady. I said step out of the damn car, Holloway barked, his voice cracking slightly with adrenaline. Elias slowly reached for the door handle. The heavy door of the SUV swung open, and Elias Voss stepped out onto the gravel. Even without his cover on, he stood at a towering 6'3". In the crisp white dress uniform, with his broad shoulders and perfect posture, he looked like a statue forged from bronze and discipline. Holloway, who was 5'9" and sporting a thickening waistline beneath his tactical vest, instantly felt physically eclipsed. The psychological effect was immediate. Holloway's heart hammered against his ribs. He felt he was losing control of the situation, even though Elias had done absolutely nothing but comply. Turn around and face the vehicle. Put your hands on the roof, Holloway shouted, stepping back and drawing his yellow X-26 taser, pointing the laser sight squarely at the center of Elias's back, right over the Navy Cross. Mercer rushed around the back of the SUV, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Grant! Whoa, wait a minute. He's complying. He's good. We have his ID. Back off, Theo, Holloway yelled, his eyes wide and unfocused. He's non-compliant. Face the car. Elias stopped. He did not put his hands on the car. Instead, he kept his hands raised in the air, open-palmed at shoulder height. Turning his head slightly to look at Holloway, he spoke with the voice of a man accustomed to commanding hundreds of elite warfighters in life-or-death situations. Officer Holloway, Elias said, having read the man's name tag. Look at my hands. They are empty. I am a commissioned officer in the United States military. I am unarmed. You are pointing a weapon at me without cause. De-escalate this situation right now. It was the tone of command that broke Holloway's fragile psyche. Holloway was used to fear. He demanded fear from the people he pulled over. Elias Voss was not afraid of him. Elias Voss was looking at him the way a parent looks at a toddler throwing a tantrum. Don't you tell me how to do my job, you piece of... Holloway caught himself, but the venom was already in the air. I said, hands on the car, spread your legs. I am going to slowly place my hands on the roof of the car. Elias narrated his own movements, prioritizing his own survival over his pride. He slowly pivoted his body back toward the SUV. As he did, the bottom edge of his dress jacket caught slightly on the fabric of his trousers. Instinctively and slowly, Elias's right hand moved down a few inches to smooth the jacket, a habit drilled into every sailor to maintain the immaculate appearance of the dress whites. He's reaching! Holloway screamed, though he knew Elias had no weapon. It was the magic phrase, the get-out-of-jail-free card taught to bad cops. The sound was shockingly loud in the quiet night. Two metallic prongs shot out from the taser barrel on a thin copper wire. They slammed into Elias's back, the barbed hooks embedding themselves deep into the thick white fabric of his uniform and piercing the skin of his shoulder blade and lower back. The taser delivered 50,000 volts of electricity directly into Commander Voss's central nervous system. Elias's body locked up instantly. The human body is essentially an electrical machine, and Holloway had just short-circuited it. Elias's muscles seized with enough force to snap bone. A guttural, involuntary groan escaped his lips as he went totally rigid, tipping backward like a felled tree. He crashed heavily onto the hard, sharp gravel of the shoulder, his head bouncing sickeningly against the asphalt edge of the road. The immaculate white uniform was instantly stained with mud, blood from his shoulder, and the dirt of the highway. "Grant, what the hell are you doing?" Mercer screamed, rushing forward in horror. "He wasn't reaching for anything. He was fixing his coat." Cuff him now! Holloway roared, stepping forward and keeping the taser triggered, delivering a second excruciating 5-second cycle of electricity into the downed commander. Elias convulsed on the ground, his teeth grinding together so hard one of his molars cracked. Mercer practically tackled Holloway to push the taser away. "Stop it! Stop!" Mercer yelled, dropping to his knees beside Elias. Elias was gasping for air, his vision swimming, every nerve ending in his body screaming in agonizing pain. Yet through the haze of the neuromuscular incapacitation, his training kicked in. He did not fight back. He knew that any resistance would be met with lead bullets instead of copper prongs. Mercer grabbed Elias's wrists, his hands trembling violently. Sir, I'm sorry. I have to cuff you. Please don't move." Elias offered no resistance as the cold steel ratcheted tightly around his wrists, biting into his skin. Holloway stood over them, chest heaving, a sick look of triumph mixed with dawning terror on his face. He had won the physical confrontation, but as he looked down at the gold trident gleaming in the gravel, reality began to sink in. "Get him in the back of the cruiser," Holloway spat, trying to maintain his tough guy facade. Resisting arrest, assault on a police officer. Mercer looked up at his partner, utterly disgusted. "Assault? Are you out of your mind? The body cam caught everything, Grant. You just tased a Navy SEAL." "I gave him an order," Holloway yelled back, though his voice was noticeably shakier. They hauled Elias to his feet. His legs were numb, his uniform ruined, his head bleeding from the fall. They shoved him into the hard plastic back seat of the cruiser. As the doors slammed shut, Elias Voss sat in the darkness, the lingering pain of the electricity burning in his muscles. He closed his eyes, took a deep tactical breath to steady his heart rate, and opened them again. They were cold, calculating, and dangerously calm. Officer Holloway had no idea what he had just unleashed. The county precinct was a drab cinderblock building that smelled of stale coffee, industrial floor wax, and misery. It was a slow night, right up until Holloway and Mercer walked Commander Elias Voss through the back double doors. The booking area went dead silent. Desk sergeants, deputies, and civilian clerks stopped what they were doing and stared. Elias's white dress uniform was covered in dirt, gravel dust, and blood. His hands were cuffed behind his back, yet he walked with a spine of steel, his chin held high, looking straight ahead. He looked less like a prisoner and more like a captured king, being paraded before peasants. "Put him in holding cell 3, Holloway ordered, trying to sound authoritative but feeling the weight of the stairs. "I need to go write up the report." "You want me to process him?" asked Desk Sergeant Malik Rivers, eyeing the ruined uniform and the golden trident. Rivers had served 4 years in the Marines. He knew exactly what he was looking at, and the blood drained from his face. "Holloway, what did you do?" "He resisted," Holloway snapped. "Just put him in the cell." They placed Elias in a small concrete holding cell and removed the cuffs. Elias did not massage his wrists. He did not complain. He turned to face the bars, looking directly at Holloway. "I am entitled to 1 phone call," Elias said, his voice echoing in the quiet booking room. "By law and by the Uniform Code of Military Justice, as I am an active duty officer being detained on highly questionable grounds," Holloway scoffed. "You'll get your call when I'm done with my paperwork, buddy." Holloway walked away, disappearing into the break room. Mercer, however, lingered. He walked up to the bars of the cell, looking miserable. "Sir," Mercer whispered, looking over his shoulder, I don't know what to say. I'm going to document everything exactly as it happened. The body cam was rolling. He was out of line." Elias looked at the young officer. He saw the fear and the guilt. "Officer Mercer, I appreciate that, but right now you need to let me make a phone call, because if I am not at my command post or if I miss my check-in, the Navy will start looking for me, and you do not want them finding me like this." Mercer swallowed hard. He walked over to the desk, grabbed the wireless receiver, and brought it back to the cell, passing it through the bars. "Make it quick." Elias dialed a secure number. It was not to a lawyer. It was not to his wife. It was to the direct line of the Base Security Operations Center at the Naval Amphibious Base. The phone rang twice. "Operations Petty Officer Miller speaking," a crisp voice answered. "Miller, this is Commander Voss. Authorization code Sierra Tango 97. A brief pause. "Commander, code verified. Your location is pinging off base. What is your status, sir?" "I am currently detained at the county precinct on Highway 17. I was subjected to an unlawful traffic stop, assaulted with a neuromuscular incapacitation device, and arrested without probable cause by local law enforcement. I am requesting immediate extraction and JAG representation." The silence on the line was profound. Then the tone shifted from standard operational to hyper-alert. "Sir, you were tased?" "Affirmative." "Are you injured?" "Minor lacerations. Nothing critical." "Copy that, Commander. Hold tight. Waking up the old man now. The cavalry is on the way." Miles away at the sprawling military compound, a red light began flashing in the secure communications room. Master Chief Petty Officer Rafe Donovan, the head of military police and base security, was awakened by his encrypted cell phone buzzing violently on his nightstand. Donovan was a mountain of a man, a 30-year veteran of the Navy who demanded perfection from his sailors. He answered the phone on the first ring. "Talk to me," Donovan growled. "Master Chief, we have a situation alpha. Commander Voss has been detained by local PD off Highway 17. He reports he was assaulted and tased by an officer." Master Chief Donovan sat up, the sleep instantly vanishing from his mind, replaced by a cold, searing fury. Voss was not just any officer. He was a highly respected SEAL commander, a man who had bled for his country in places that did not exist on standard maps, and some local beat cop had tased him in his dress whites. "Wake up the Vice Admiral," Donovan ordered, throwing off his blankets and reaching for his boots. "And wake up the Quick Reaction Force. Get the armored transports ready." "Master Chief, you want the QRF for a local police station?" "I want 2 Bearcats, a full complement of military police in tactical gear, and the JAG duty officer," Donovan barked, strapping his sidearm to his thigh. "These local cowboys think they can assault a United States naval commander and lock him in a cage. They are about to find out what jurisdiction really means. Mobilize them now." Within a short time, the Naval Amphibious Base was fully awake. Vice Admiral Harlan Crow, a stern, gray-haired tactician, stood in the command center reviewing Elias Voss's GPS tracking data. "Admiral," Master Chief Donovan said, stepping into the room fully kitted out in tactical gear. "Vehicles are prepped. We are ready to move on the precinct." Admiral Crow looked at the map, then looked at Donovan. "Master Chief, this is delicate. We cannot have a shootout with local law enforcement, but we absolutely will not allow one of our top commanders to be humiliated and unlawfully held by a rogue precinct." "Understood, sir. We will overwhelm them with presence, not firepower. We will walk in, we will take our commander, and we will leave. We will let the lawyers handle the ashes tomorrow." Crow nodded slowly. "Go get our boy, Master Chief. Take complete control of that station." At the county precinct, Officer Holloway was sitting in the break room, nursing a cup of terrible coffee and trying to figure out how to write a report that justified tasing a compliant Navy SEAL. He was sweating. The adrenaline had worn off, and the reality of his actions was starting to close in. He did not hear the distant heavy rumble of diesel engines approaching down the highway. He did not know that 3 massive black, up-armored military vehicles were turning off the main road, their headlights cutting through the fog, rolling straight toward the front doors of his quiet little police station. The storm had arrived. The rumbling started as a low, almost imperceptible vibration in the floorboards of the county precinct. Desk Sergeant Rivers was who had just finished logging a petty theft report, paused. The stale coffee in his mug rippled slightly. It felt like a minor earthquake or a fully loaded freight train running entirely too close to the building. Rivers stood up, his joints popping, and walked over to the reinforced glass of the front lobby doors. The thick coastal fog rolling off Highway 17 obscured the road, but cutting through the mist were blinding beams of stark, brilliant white and amber LED lights. Not the frantic red and blue of local law enforcement, but the disciplined, piercing glow of military tactical vehicles. 3 massive Lenco Bearcat armored personnel carriers rolled into the small asphalt parking lot of the precinct. The heavy run-flat tires crunched over the gravel, the immense weight of the up-armored chassis groaning as they came to a synchronized halt, completely blocking the exits. Rivers' breath hitched. He had served in Fallujah. He knew exactly what an overwhelming show of force looked like. Before the engines even idled down, the heavy steel doors of the transport swung open. Out poured 12 United States Naval Military Police operators clad in full black tactical gear, Kevlar vests, and drop-leg holsters. They moved with a terrifying, silent precision. There was no shouting, No frantic running, just the terrifying efficiency of a unit that operated as a single lethal organism. They immediately secured the perimeter of the police station, taking up strategic overwatch positions near the doors and windows. The main entrance doors to the precinct were suddenly shoved open, the hinges screaming in protest as they slammed against the cinderblock walls. Master Chief Petty Officer Rafe Donovan stepped into the fluorescent-lit lobby. He was a towering, broad-shouldered man with eyes like chipped flint and a jawline carved from granite. He wore his utility uniform, the anchor stars on his collar gleaming under the harsh lights, a sidearm strapped securely to his hip. Flanking him was Lieutenant Commander Avery Kensington, the duty judge advocate general officer, holding a leather briefcase and wearing a look of absolute, unyielding authority. Rivers instinctively stood at parade rest behind his desk. His throat went completely dry. "I am Master Chief Donovan, United States Navy." Donovan's voice boomed, a deep, resonant baritone that commanded the air in the room. "And I am here for Commander Elias Voss, who is the ranking officer in this facility." The few deputies in the bullpen froze, staring at the armored operators standing just outside the glass, holding M4 carbines across their chests at the low ready. Hearing the commotion, Officer Grant Holloway swaggered out from the break room, a half-eaten donut in one hand and a smug expression plastered across his face. The smugness vanished the second he saw the Master Chief and the squad of military police securing his station. "What the hell is this?" Holloway demanded, his voice cracking slightly as his hand instinctively drifted toward his duty belt. Master Chief Donovan's eyes locked onto Holloway. The air pressure in the room seemed to drop. Donovan took 3 deliberate steps forward, closing the distance between them until he was looking down at the local cop. Donovan did not yell. He did not have to. "Move your hand away from your belt, officer," Donovan said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "If you unholster that weapon in the presence of my detail, you will not live to regret it." "Now, are you the individual who detained Commander Voss?" Holloway swallowed hard, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "This is local jurisdiction. You can't just storm a police station. I arrested him for resisting an assault on a police officer. He's in my custody. He is a Tier 1 asset of the United States Armed Forces." Lieutenant Commander Kensington interjected smoothly, stepping forward and opening his briefcase on Rivers' booking desk. "And you, officer, have committed a gross violation of federal law, a breach of the Posse Comitatus Act, and an unlawful detention of a commissioned officer without probable cause." "He was swerving," Holloway lied, his voice escalating into a panic. "He reached into his jacket. I gave him a lawful order." Officer Theo Mercer, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly stood up. His face was pale, his hands shaking, but his conscience had finally reached its breaking point. "He wasn't reaching, Grant," Mercer said loudly, his voice echoing in the dead silence of the room. Holloway whipped his head around, his eyes wide with betrayal. "Shut up, Theo, you're a rookie. You don't know what—" "The body cam footage is already uploaded to the precinct cloud, Master Chief," Mercer continued, staring directly at Donovan. "The commander was completely compliant. He was smoothing his dress coat. Officer Holloway deployed his X-26 taser without provocation, striking the commander in the back. 50,000 volts, 2 cycles. Master Chief Donovan's face hardened into a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. He slowly turned his gaze back to Holloway. Holloway took a reflexive step backward, suddenly hyper-aware of the sheer physical danger he was in. "You tased a compliant Navy SEAL commander in his dress whites," Donovan stated, the words dripping with a cold, terrifying venom. "You fired a weapon into the back of a man who has done more for this country before breakfast than you will do in your entire miserable, cowardly life." I have union representation," Holloway stammered weakly, completely out of his depth. "Your union," JAG Officer Kensington said, pulling a stack of stamped documents from his briefcase, "has exactly 0 jurisdiction over a military tribunal, nor does it protect you from the Department of Defense. Sergeant Rivers, open the holding cell, now." Rivers did not hesitate. He grabbed the heavy ring of brass keys and practically sprinted down the short hallway to holding cell 3. Donovan, Kensington, and Mercer followed closely behind. Holloway remained rooted in the lobby, trembling, surrounded by the unblinking stares of the military police at the door. When Rivers unlocked the heavy iron gate, it swung open with a metallic squeal. Commander Elias Voss sat perfectly still on the metal bench. His crisp, choker-white uniform was a horrific sight, smeared with mud from the highway shoulder, torn at the shoulder blade where the taser prongs had violently ripped through the fabric, and stained with dried blood from where his head had struck the asphalt. Yet his posture remained immaculate. He looked up, his expression stoic, betraying no pain despite the lingering, agonizing burn of the neuromuscular incapacitation in his muscles. Master Chief Donovan immediately snapped to attention and threw a razor-sharp salute. "Commander, apologies for the delay, sir." Elias stood up slowly. His right leg trembled slightly, a residual effect of the electrical shock, but he locked his knee and returned the salute. "Master Chief, good to see you," Elias said quietly, his voice raspy. He looked past Donovan to the young JAG officer. "Lieutenant Commander Kensington, I assume you have the release paperwork." "Signed by a federal judge, sir." Kensington nodded. "You are coming with us." Elias stepped out of the cell. He paused, looking at Officer Mercer, who was staring at the floor in shame. "Officer Mercer," Elias said softly. The young cop looked up, expecting anger. Instead, he saw a quiet respect. "Integrity is doing the right thing when it is terrifying to do so. Remember that." Mercer nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "Yes, sir. I am so deeply sorry, Commander." Elias walked down the hallway and back into the lobby. As he entered, the military police operators outside the glass immediately snapped to attention. Inside the room, Holloway was backed against the wall, hyperventilating. Elias stopped in the center of the room. He did not look angry. He looked disappointed. He looked at Holloway the way one looks at a rabid dog, something dangerous, unpredictable, and ultimately pathetic. "I told you, Officer Holloway," Elias said, his voice echoing in the dead quiet. "I was unarmed. I was compliant. You let your fear and your ego override your training. You're not above the law." Holloway spat, trying to salvage a shred of his shattered pride, though he was shaking like a leaf. Lieutenant Commander Kensington stepped forward, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "No, Officer Holloway, he is not, but you are about to find out exactly how far below the federal government you are." The lobby doors swung open again, and in rushed Chief of Police Dominic Reyes. Reyes was an older man out of breath, his tie askew, having driven at high speed from his suburban home after receiving a frantic phone call from his dispatch center about an armored military siege at his precinct. Reyes stopped dead in his tracks, taking in the scene of the heavily armed MPs blocking the doors, the Master Chief looming like a thundercloud, his best desk sergeant standing at rigid attention, and a highly decorated battered Navy SEAL commander standing in the center of the room. Finally, his eyes landed on Grant Holloway, who looked like he was about to vomit. "What in God's name is going on in my station?" Chief Reyes demanded, his voice cracking. "Chief Reyes," JAG Officer Kensington said, stepping forward, "your officer, Grant Holloway, conducted an illegal traffic stop, assaulted a commissioned military officer without cause, and unlawfully detained him. We can handle this internally," Reyes said quickly, holding up his hands. He knew Holloway was a liability. The town council had been trying to fire him for years, but the police union always blocked it. "We'll open an internal affairs investigation immediately. There's no need for the Navy to invade my precinct." "An internal affairs investigation," Kensington repeated, a cold smile touching the corners of his lips. "Chief Reyes, you misunderstand the gravity of this situation. This is no longer a civil rights violation or a simple police brutality case." Kensington turned to Commander Voss. "Commander, do you still have the package on your person?" Elias reached his hand inside the torn breast pocket of his ruined white dress jacket. He pulled out a small, heavy, matte black titanium drive. It was no larger than a matchbox, but the biometric scanner on its surface glowed with a faint, pulsing red light. Chief Reyes frowned. "What is that?" "This, Chief Reyes," Kensington explained, his voice dropping into a deadly serious register, "is a Level 7 encrypted Department of Defense storage drive. It contains the real-time deployment schedules, satellite communication codes, and extraction coordinates for 3 active Tier 1 special mission units currently operating in hostile territory overseas." The color rapidly drained from Chief Reyes's face. He knew enough about federal law to know that the words Level 7 and Special Mission Units were not to be trifled with. "Commander Voss," Kensington continued, pacing the floor like a shark, "is the designated secure courier for this intel. He was transporting it from a secure briefing at the amphibious base to a secondary secure facility. By law, this drive must remain on his person, and his person must remain uncompromised. Kensington spun around and pointed a sharp finger directly at Holloway's chest. When Officer Holloway unlawfully ordered Commander Voss out of his vehicle, deployed a weapon against him, forced him onto a public highway, and locked him in a civilian cell, he didn't just assault a man, he compromised the physical security of classified national defense intelligence. Holloway's knees actually buckled. He grabbed the edge of the break room doorway to keep from collapsing. I didn't know. Ignorance of the law is not a defense, officer. Donovan growled, stepping closer to Holloway. Ignorance of who you are dealing with is a fatal error. Under the Espionage Act of 1917 and the Patriot Act, interfering with a federal officer in the transport of highly classified defense materials is a federal felony, Kensington stated, reciting the law with surgical precision. Furthermore, by rendering Commander Voss physically incapacitated via electroshock on an unsecured public roadway, you exposed United States state secrets to potential interception. You're bluffing, Holloway whispered, tears of absolute panic finally spilling over his eyelids. This is a traffic stop. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Naval Criminal Investigative Service were notified the moment Commander Voss missed his secure check-in, Kensington said, checking his watch. In fact, Chief Reyes, if you look out your window, you will see them arriving right now. Through the heavy fog outside, two black unmarked Suburbans pulled aggressively into the lot, parking directly behind the military Bearcats. 4 men and 2 women in dark suits and windbreakers bearing the letters FBI and NCIS stepped out, moving briskly toward the precinct doors. Chief Reyes realized in a split second that his precinct, his career, and his town were about to be swallowed whole by the federal government if he did not act immediately. The Union could not protect Holloway from the Espionage Act. Nobody could. Reyes turned to Holloway, his eyes blazing with a mix of terror and supreme anger. "Grant," Chief Reyes said, his voice trembling with rage, "give me your badge. Give me your gun." "Chief, please. The Union can't save you from federal prison," Reyes roared, spittle flying from his lips. "You compromised national security because you wanted to play tough guy on a traffic stop. Badge and gun, now!" With shaking hands, Holloway unclipped his duty belt. It hit the linoleum floor with a heavy, pathetic thud. He unpinned the silver shield from his chest and handed it to his chief. In a short span of time, Grant Holloway had gone from an arrogant bully with a badge to an unemployed civilian facing decades in a federal penitentiary. The FBI and NCIS agents pushed through the front doors, immediately flashing their credentials at Chief Reyes. "Special Agent Hartwell, NCIS," the lead agent said, taking in the room. He looked at Commander Voss's ruined uniform. "Commander, are you secure?" "I am, Agent Hartwell," Elias replied calmly. "Take him," Hartwell said, gesturing toward Holloway. 2 FBI agents grabbed Holloway by the arms, spinning him around and slamming him against the cinder block wall. They roughly kicked his legs apart, the exact same way Holloway had demanded of Elias earlier. The sharp metallic click of federal handcuffs echoed in the quiet room as they ratcheted them tightly around Holloway's wrists. "Grant Holloway, you are under arrest for the assault of a federal officer, unlawful detention, and gross negligence in the handling of classified national defense materials," the agent recited, pulling Holloway away from the wall. As they walked Holloway toward the exit, they passed directly in front of Commander Voss. Holloway was weeping now, openly sobbing, his bravado entirely broken, reduced to a hollow, terrified shell. Elias looked at him one last time. He did not gloat. He did not smile. "You demanded respect tonight, Holloway," Elias said, his voice low and incredibly steady, "but respect is earned through discipline and honor. You have neither. You are a disgrace to the concept of service." Holloway could not even meet his eyes. The FBI agents hauled him out the door into the cold, damp coastal night, shoving him into the back of the unmarked Suburban. Master Chief Donovan turned to Elias. "Sir, the medical team is waiting in the transport to check your injuries." Elias nodded carefully, placing the titanium drive back into his inner pocket. He looked around the silent precinct, giving a final nod of acknowledgement to Officer Mercer, who was still standing by the desks, shell-shocked. "Let's go home, Master Chief," Elias said. Flanked by his JAG officer and the towering Master Chief, Commander Elias Voss walked out of the precinct. The heavy steel doors of the Bearcat hissed open to receive him. As the armored convoy backed out of the lot, their brilliant white lights cutting through the fog, they left behind a shattered precinct, a disgraced cop, and a stark reminder that true power does not need to shout. True power simply acts. By the following morning, the quiet coastal town was effectively under federal occupation. The story had not yet leaked to the national press, but within the insular, hyper-connected world of law enforcement and the Department of Defense, the shockwave was absolute. Highway 17 had been cordoned off by federal agents to meticulously photograph and document the exact spot where Commander Elias Voss's blood and the copper taser prongs still lay on the gravel. At the county precinct, the doors were locked to the public. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, alongside the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, had seized every computer, every server, and every physical file in the building. Chief Dominic Reyes was forced to sit in his own conference room while federal auditors ripped his department's history to shreds, uncovering years of suppressed complaints, excessive force violations, and systemic corruption. But the true battle was brewing miles away in a secure conference room at the federal courthouse. Grant Holloway had been denied bail. He sat in an orange federal jumpsuit, his wrists shackled to the heavy oak table, looking small, pale, and terrified. Beside him sat Victor Lang, a high-powered attorney funded by the State Police Benevolent Association, known for getting bad cops out of impossible situations. Across the table sat Lieutenant Commander Avery Kensington, representing the Navy's interests, and United States Attorney Lila Moreno, a woman who possessed a legendary conviction rate and zero tolerance for police misconduct. This is a massive overreach, and you all know it, Lang argued, slamming a hand onto the table. My client made a mistake during a high-stress traffic stop. It's a civil rights issue at worst. The Espionage Act, that is a theatrical absurdity designed to intimidate a local officer. U.S. Attorney Moreno did not even blink. She slowly opened a manila folder, extracting a single sheet of paper bearing the heavy, embossed seal of the United States Secretary of Defense. Mr. Lang, Moreno began, her voice a chilling monotone. Are you familiar with the legal definition of constructive compromise regarding national defense information? Lang shifted in his seat. I am aware of it, but my client didn't steal any drive. He didn't access any data. He tased a man who happened to have a USB stick in his pocket. Lieutenant Commander Kensington leaned forward, the harsh fluorescent lights reflecting off his wire-rimmed glasses. He spoke with the surgical precision of a military prosecutor who had already won the case before walking into the room. It is not a USB stick, Mr. Lang, Kensington corrected sharply. It is a Level 7 biometric secure transport drive, and your client didn't just tase a man, he rendered the designated federal courier unconscious and incapacitated on an unsecured public highway for a critical window of time. Kensington slid 3 glossy 8x10 photographs across the table. Exhibit A, a time-stamped still from Officer Mercer's body cam showing Elias convulsing on the ground, highly vulnerable. Exhibit B, a satellite image of the highway stretch revealing a dense tree line less than 50 yards away, a prime location for an ambush. Exhibit C, a heavily redacted intelligence document. During that window, Kensington continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, the operational security of 3 Tier 1 special mission units was compromised. If hostile foreign intelligence assets had been tracking Commander Voss, which is a daily threat matrix we actively monitor, your client hand-delivered them a window to execute the commander, take the drive, and compromise national security. That is the definition of gross negligence under the Espionage Act. Lang looked at the photos, then at Holloway, who was openly hyperventilating. You can't prove there were foreign agents in the woods. We don't have to, Moreno countered smoothly. The statute only requires us to prove that his reckless actions created the vulnerability, which they did. Furthermore, we have the body cam footage of your client explicitly lying to create false probable cause. He's reaching. We all heard it. Lang tried one last desperate bluff. If you take this to trial, I will subpoena Commander Voss. I will put his entire service record on trial. The media will turn this into a circus, and the Navy hates bad PR. A low, humorless chuckle echoed in the room. Vice Admiral Harlan Crowe, who had been standing quietly in the shadows near the door, stepped into the light. He wore his 4-star uniform, a towering figure of absolute authority. "Mr. Lang," Admiral Crowe said, his voice rumbling like distant artillery, "do you truly believe the United States Navy fears a public trial regarding one of its most decorated warfighters? Commander Voss has 2 silver stars. He pulled 3 wounded men from a burning helicopter in Kandahar while taking enemy fire. He is bulletproof. The public will build statues of him." Crowe leaned over the table, bringing his face inches from the Union lawyer. "If you fight this, we will not just bury your client," Crowe promised, his eyes devoid of mercy. "We will drag your entire police department, your union, and your state leadership into the sunlight. We will make Grant Holloway the poster child for federal prosecution of corrupt police. We are offering him a plea deal today. He takes 20 years in a federal penitentiary, or we go to trial, and U.S. Attorney Moreno seeks the maximum under the Espionage Act, life without the possibility of parole." Holloway let out a choked, ragged sob, dropping his head onto the oak table, his chains rattling. The bravado was entirely gone. He was finally face to face with a power structure he could not bully, intimidate, or manipulate. Lang looked at his client, then at the U.S. attorney, and finally at the vice admiral. The union lawyer slowly closed his briefcase. "Give us the plea agreement," Lang whispered. Months later, the heavy oak doors of the federal district court opened, and the press cameras flashed like a lightning storm. Former officer Grant Holloway, stripped of his badge, his pension, and his freedom, was led out in handcuffs and leg irons by 2 U.S. Marshals. He looked 10 years older. The judge had just accepted his guilty plea for assault on a federal officer and gross negligence of classified intelligence. The sentence was swift and brutal. 22 years at a maximum security federal penitentiary. There would be no early release. There would be no union appeals. The system he had abused for years had finally devoured him. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was solemn. Elias Voss, fully recovered and dressed once again in his pristine choker-white uniform, sat in the front row. The Navy Cross on his chest gleamed under the courtroom lights. He had not gloated during the sentencing. He had not shown anger. He had simply watched justice run its course with the quiet stoicism of a man who understood the weight of consequence. As Elias walked out of the courtroom, flanked by Master Chief Donovan and Lieutenant Commander Kensington, he was approached by a young man in a neat, well-tailored suit. It was Theo Mercer. Mercer had resigned from the local police force the morning after the incident. His decision to speak the truth against his partner had made him a pariah among the corrupt elements of his department, but it had saved his soul and his freedom. "Commander Voss," Mercer said, stepping forward nervously, his hands clasped in front of him. Elias stopped, offering a firm, respectful nod. "Mr. Mercer, it is good to see you." I wanted to thank you, sir," Mercer said, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. "And I wanted to apologize again for my part in what happened that night. I should have intervened sooner. I should have stopped him before he pulled the trigger." Elias studied the young man. He saw the guilt, but more importantly, he saw the integrity that had compelled Mercer to tell the truth to the Master Chief when it would have been easier to lie and cover for his partner. "You stepped out of the darkness when it mattered, Theo," Elias said, his tone softening, losing the sharp edge of military command. "You told the truth when a man with a gun and a badge told you to lie. That takes courage. Do not let one terrible night define your future." Mercer nodded, wiping a tear from his eye. "I won't, sir. Actually, the FBI reached out to me. U.S. Attorney Moreno recommended me. I'm starting at the FBI Academy in Quantico next month." A genuine, warm smile broke across Elias's face. He extended his large right hand. "Then I expect you to be the kind of agent this country deserves. Congratulations!" Mercer shook the commander's hand vigorously. "I won't let you down, sir." Elias turned and walked down the marble steps of the courthouse toward the waiting black military SUV. The coastal breeze caught the edges of his white coat, the golden trident on his chest catching the late afternoon sun. Master Chief Donovan opened the door for him. "Good day for the good guys, sir." "It's a day for accountability, Master Chief," Elias replied, sliding into the back seat. "Let's get back to base. We have a deployment briefing, and I do not intend to be late." As the SUV pulled away from the curb, leaving the circus of media and the shattered remnants of Grant Holloway's life behind, Elias looked out the tinted window. He thought about the flashing lights in his rearview mirror. He thought about the pain, the dirt, and the indignity of the gravel shoulder. But he also thought about the unshakable foundation of the oath he had taken, an oath to protect the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Sometimes those enemies wore foreign uniforms, and sometimes they wore local badges and hid behind a shield of unearned authority. Elias Voss had proven that a uniform does not demand respect. It represents a commitment to earn it every single day. He had faced down the worst of domestic cowardice with the best of military discipline, and he had won without firing a single shot. The SUV merged onto Highway 17, the exact same stretch of road where the nightmare had begun. But this time, there were no flashing red and blue lights. There was only the open road ahead, clear and unobstructed, leading back to the sea, back to his team, and back to the silent, unyielding watch he kept over the nation. The chain of command had not snapped. It had proven unbreakable.